ES Audio.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio, supported by Fuller's London Pride, official beer of Premiership Rugby. Support with pride.
Hello, I'm Lawrence Dallaglio. Welcome to the Evening Standard Rugby Podcast, supported by Fuller's London Pride. As ever, I have my wonderful co-host. Actually, she's more like the presenter, to be honest. Sarra Elgan is with us. Sarra, how are you?
I'm good, Lawrence. How are you?
Very well. I'm not sure why I've got glasses on because I don't need them to see.
I know you look like very studious. I'm not used to seeing you looking bright. Okay, also joining us, we're delighted to welcome on board the new rugby correspondent from the Evening Standard. It's Nick Purewal. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Sarra. How are you? You on?
Nick, good to have you on.
Thank you. Good to be
You're
here.
very studious as well.
Yeah, I actually can't see, so I need them. They're not for show. Just yeah.
And our guest this weekend is a man who's made over 250 appearances for Harlequins. He has represented England 83 times and the British Irish Lions on their 2017 tour. He's a much-loved personality, both on and off the pitch. It's Joe Marler. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
I don't think I've ever given you an intro like that before. That was really nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was still really insincere. But I'll take it, whatever.
I forgot to add, very entertaining post-match interviewee. Could have had that.
Well, is that really something to shout about? No, not really. Lowell, what's the crack with the glasses, mate? Is it like Ugo, who just wears the fake glasses for fashion? Or
well, no, not really.
Now hit the age that you got bad eyes?
I am. I'm 50. You wouldn't believe it, but I have turned 50. Ugo must be in his 30s. So yeah, I need the bins now. I'm told I look like Harry Hill. I was thinking more sort of Bricktop from Snatch or something, but it's Harry Hill, I think.
Do you know what nemesis means?
You don't want to be counting the fingers you haven't got. There we go. How are you, Joe? How was the Barbarians? You've had a sort of a nice week, haven't you? Really, of just getting together, having a crack. Maybe only 2 or 3 training sessions, if that. How was your week?
Lowell, have you done the Barbars?
I have, yeah, but I'll never forget it actually because we trained at Chelsea. We trained on a pitch in Chelsea, and the boy Mike Ruddock had just been appointed the coach, and he just lost his job with Wales, and he was obviously a bit overexcited. And started laying out line-out cones and sort of cones, and the lad said to me, "What's he doing?"
Oh no!
I said, "What do you mean? What's he doing?" And he said, "Well, he looks like he's laying out cones for a training session." So they said, "Oh, go and have a word with him." And literally, I remember going. I said to him, "Mike, I know you're keen, but I'm very sorry, but we don't really do any training for this week."
That's not how it works around here, Mike. I appreciate you're still in real work mode, but we'll just put a couple of pods up. In fact, we won't put pods up. We'll just throw the ball in on the game day and see how it goes. But
well, it went quite well. It went well, didn't it?
Well, you've experienced it yourself, mate, and it is up there with. It's up there with one of my favourite experiences to do in rugby. Especially now that I'm getting of that age where the professionalism is probably going to come to an end soon. It's nice to actually still make the most of these opportunities of meeting all different players from around the world, different coaches as well. I was really looking forward to actually seeing what Razor and Roger about. They're highly praised around the world, but it's just a different thing to actually see how they work.
How was Roger, Joe?
He's a very hard worker, and I use worker both on and off the field, and fantastic character. But you can tell in the cold light of day when we were hydrating with clearer liquids, and you get onto a conversation about rugby with him, that he's very switched on, very intelligent about the game, very determined in the way the game should be played, and it was really nice to sort of tap into that sort of I'd put him as a world-class approach to how the game should be played.
He's a good guy, isn't he? Really good guy.
Very good bloke.
Lawrence, how's your week been?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
You're in a better mood this week.
I was at the family end of last week, and then I went to Twickenham, which we'll talk a little bit more about. much happier this week, better performance. And yeah, really enjoyed it actually. And Nick, you were supposed to be interviewing Mako Vunipola, but obviously Eddie's decided that there's a media shutdown. Is there, or was it?
No.
Less sinister.
No, he just had more important things to do, which he can never argue with. So we'll pick that up tomorrow. So looking forward to that. It should be very good.
Excellent. Should we put some questions to our wonderful guest, Joe? It's great to have you with us. I know you've got your own podcast, which we'll talk a little bit about. Now, we love personalities, which is why we love hearing from yourself. I think I read somewhere that when you joined Quins, Colin Osborne, who was one of the great coaches at Quins, paired you with Jason Leonard, and Jason was your mentor. And I believe you turned up for your first mentoring session, and Jason was halfway through his own session at the Sun Inn. So, how was it with the big fella as your mentor?
Yeah, I was 17, and Colin had arranged. He said, "Look, here's Jason Leonard's number. Arrange it between yourself. He knows it's coming." And blah blah. I was like, "Okay, yeah, okay, thank you." So I've texted him and said, "Hello, Mr. Leonard," if you can text in that voice, but that's exactly how the tone was of my text. I've been asked to arrange and come and meet with you. It's all right. And the text about, "Yeah, mate, I'll be at the Sun tomorrow night. Give us a shout and we'll catch up then." I was like, right, cool. So I found out where the Sun was, got in there. There was quite a few people outside, walked in. There's rugby memorabilia all over the walls. You know, there's quite a lot of him actually. You can clearly see there was actually quite a bend in part of the bar. That I was looking for a little tag that he was at. That's his bend where he's leant on it for so many years. And I said to the barman, I said, is Mr. Leonard around? And he was like, yeah, why? And I was like, well, I've got a meeting with him. It's like, it's arranged. He's like, yeah, he was here. I think he might be outside or something. So I went outside and I found him half propped up against a car outside. And I said, Jason, it's Joe, blah, blah. And he started swaying a bit. And clearly, even though we'd arranged 7 o'clock, he'd been there probably from about 2. And he said, "Nice to meet you, boy." He shook my hand. He said, "Do you mind if we rearrange this for another time? It's just I'm well on my way here." So I was like, "Yeah, of course, yeah, no, okay, I'll leave, thank you." And then we arranged the following week a cup of coffee in Twickenham this time around. So yeah, I felt very privileged actually, to someone that I'd grown up watching, to then have a contact to on and off mentor. It's not one of those strict mentorships that's like I'll be nagging him all the time, because clearly he doesn't want that. But it's good that Colin put me in contact to have over the years to just sort of level me at sometimes, and just tap his brains both about the stuff on the field and as much off of it, to be honest.
And you're obviously mentoring people now, Joe. Are you? Who are you mentoring? What sort of mentor are you?
I am an open book. I am an open door. My door is always open. I say to anyone, there is an open invite to my house anytime you need to catch up or need to wrap my brains or whatever. However, I do live 71 miles away from everyone, so no one's really taken up that offer yet, but it is an open invite.
That's very kind of you.
Joe, talk me through the some of these tracksuits you've been wearing on the way to games. I have to say, I mean that couldn't have been a little tip from Jason, because he can't even fit in a tracksuit like that. But is that just a little bit of you expressing yourself, or is it?
Well, it started in lockdown, when we were still playing through it, and it soon became clear to me that I was struggling a bit with the fact there was no crowds. I'd gone a long period of my career not really appreciating the fans, or it didn't sit comfortably either that, you know, people would want to ask for a photo or something. I was like, so I'd end up being quite rude, and I'm sure there's many a journalist that has been the back of that and appreciated that. And it was the same sort of vibe with fans as well, that I didn't really have that connection, because I was like, no, it's weird, and also I'm just kind of doing it for the money. I'm doing it as a profession sort of thing. And lockdown took that all away, and it became soulless, and I was really struggling to go up and get up for games, even though I felt lucky that we were still able to keep playing, still trying to put some smiles on faces for people watching it on TV. But I thought, oh, sod it, I'll just stop mixing it up a bit. We were with Adidas at the time, and I thought they've got some decent gears. They've got some decent retro gears. Adidas are they're the nuts when it comes to it. They're them. And unfortunately, I'd lost my Adidas sponsorship gig back in 2016 for certain on-field discrepancies. And so I bought one, and it was fun, and all the boys were like, okay. But so it gave me something a bit fun to do. And then it carried on, and the boys would be like, oh, right, well, what we're going to get next week, something, you've got to be this, you've got to try as outrageous as you can. And some of them, mate, have cost me an arm and a leg.
They look expensive. They do look expensive.
There was a red one. It was a Ivy Park. It was Beyonce collaboration with Adidas. And I had to lock it down really quick. And that was the priciest one going, only for me to turn up at the stoop for people to say that I look like what are those things that you put in your cupboard and they're wrapped in red? An immersion heater. They were like, you look like an immersion heater walking into the thing. And I was like, that wasn't the vibe I was going for, but it's fine. But fortunately for me with that one, because they were so limited edition, you can't get them anymore. I plan on keeping that for a little bit longer, and then hopefully selling it to someone that wants a 4XL tracksuit.
How much did that cost you then?
That tracksuit in all, because I went to town, I went with the shoes, the socks, everything, even the jacket. That was north of about 1,800 quid.
Oh my gosh, Joe.
So, that's probably part of the why no one wants me to mentor anyone coming through, because I'd just recommend that they spunk all their money on tracksuits rather than invest.
Feels like we need to appreciate these tracksuits a bit more now, though, not.
Yes and no, but unfortunately, we lost the Adidas gig, and Castor came in, and there was a conversation around, have you got any decent tracksuits? And I think the club had gotten to the point where we're like, no, mate, can you just wear what you're meant to wear these days? It's like, we'll see.
So we just moving on to your, you've widely documented as in terms of the work that you've done with the mental health charity Calm, and you've, in terms of your own mental health experiences in your autobiography and your TV program, Big Boys Don't Cry. It's a topic that you're very happy to talk about. I mean, you just mentioned your problems during lockdown. Just want to talk a little bit more about, do you see yourself as being able to be an ambassador for that and just speak up? Because, I'm sure there's plenty of other rugby players that feel the same way.
I never envisaged, or my aim wasn't to be an ambassador for it or be a voice for it. It was actually just selfishly helping me. Just being able to openly talk about it was internally helping me to just normalize it for myself, to accept things for myself and understand it more for myself. And then, other teammates were reaching out, both having played against and with, saying that they'd experienced the same feelings, the same things. Their wife had put them in contact with various people, and then it sort of became, I was like, well, hang on a minute, why can't we just talk? As soon as you start talking about mental health, it's like, oh, your mental health issues, and so it's always like a negative connotation to it, that you have mental health issues. But it's about understanding a bit more that it's mental health. It's the same way as your physical health. You spoke earlier about you've hit 50 now and your eyes have started to go. Right, that's part of your physical health. What can you do to then sort of fix that? Well, make yourself look like Harry Hill, and there you go, jobs are good and you're sorted. But that's the sort of same approach that I think we need to start having more conversations, and we are definitely in rugby having more conversations. Boys are opening up a lot more. And I think the next step is actually like the tool acquisition of it all. Actually, how do you start a conversation? How do you recognize the signs in boys, or your teammates that are struggling, that haven't quite, they want to open up but they can't open up, and just be that sort of ear that you can be there to listen to and ask the sort of right questions. We need to start having those tools, because it's just everyone's going through the same things, just at different levels and at different periods of their time of their life. So it wasn't my aim to be that voice, but I'm happy that if it's helping people, then I'll run with it and I'll continue, because selfishly, say it like that it continues to help me to regularly check in with myself and work on things that I need to.
Yeah, because I think, I've spoken to a lot of players in different clubs that feel the need to speak about mental health. So in terms of like the clubs themselves, what can they do to support and to help players?
Yeah, I can't speak for all the other clubs, but I know that Quins have been big drivers in that. We've recently had a campaign that I've actually, this wasn't teed up at all, but I've got a T-shirt on a lend an ear campaign where they came in and took photos of our ears. I'm not sure if Graham Roundtree was still at the club that they would have gone ahead with the campaign with the state of his pork chops on the side of his head, but and the club have been big drivers in those tools section, in terms of having, it's one thing talking about mental health and saying, right, let's open up. The next thing is actually, well, what are the right questions to ask? What are the right things to look out for? What and sort of getting in there early before things do escalate, whether it's with alcohol, whether it's with your finances off the field, whether it's with family, your partners, or actually none of that. And actually it might be someone that doesn't understand how they're feeling, what they're doing, or whether it is rugby pressures. And the club, I big respect to the club for being big drivers in that. And I do hear murmurs. There's a big charity, Looseheads, that you see a lot of the boys wearing T-shirts and getting on board those campaigns, and I'm sure there's a lot of clubs that are, especially with the way the game's been lately. You got the Wasps and the Worcester boys that now more than ever would have needed boys rallying around and their networks rallying around to help them sort of carve out what's going on for them next.
Yeah, I think all that is helping, isn't it? Because we are talking about it more, I think, which is a massive, massive help. Can we talk about your podcast, which actually has absolutely nothing to do with rugby, everything but rugby? So what made you want to do it, to start it? How did it all kick off?
Oh, it was, I met Tom Fordyce and Steve Jones, who used to be at the BBC, and Tom was at the BBC for years. They were both there, and Tom was a big part of the Peter Crouch podcast. And then they were looking to leave. I met them in Japan, and we got on really well. Then after the tournament, they'd left the BBC and set up their own podcast company. And they said, "Look, mate, would you be interested in setting up a podcast?" And I went, "Not. There's 100 rugby podcasts, mate. Like it's a saturated market, and I don't know what analytical insight I can really bring to it." And they were like, no, we don't want to do rugby. We understand there's ones out there that already work, so don't worry about it. We want to set up a podcast where we just go and meet loads of different people, loads of different stories, loads of different jobs, backgrounds, and see where it runs. And I was like, go on then. Yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's have a crack at that. And
give us an insight. Who's been your best show? Who have you been like randomly gone to have a chat with? That's really kind of perked your interest.
There's been a few. There was a marine biologist called Darren who came on, and he was so well prepared, and the facts that he came out with just blew our minds. He reckons. He has had it backed up, to be fair. There was a bit of bluffing there. Right? He reckons we know more about space than we do about the deep blue sea. And I went, how is that possible? What do you mean? Like, he's like, we can't get down there. We haven't got the tools that can get down there. So that blew my mind. And then it goes from a psychopath expert that we had on, Dr. Mark, who there was a few question marks around whether I would fit on that.
Well, you said it had nothing to do with rugby.
Excellent. And
Psychopath.
we just tried getting rid of that background story from him knowing about me. Or we had a woman that worked on death row for a good 10 years. So hearing those sort of stories, or a bit dark. And then we had Paddy, a homeless guy who'd spent 10, 15 years homeless. And trying to get a bit of perspective and understanding on what goes on in that world, because we all live a very privileged life when you sit there and listen to his story and the things he's been through, and then to come out the other side, they were really big ones. And then there's also some fun random ones that you get, like who do we have on? He was a drainage engineer. And when they said, "Oh, we've lined up a drainage engineer," I was like, "Oh, goody." Wonder. I'm not sure how much we can get out of this, but it ended up being one of the best ones, because it can just go off on a tangent. I'm sure Sarra, you've definitely experienced this. A lot of things can go off on a tangent with my mind. So it's everyone's got a story if you ask the right questions, and it's just something I really enjoy doing, and takes me away from the rugby bubble and keeps me a little bit fresher coming back into it.
Do you know what I enjoyed watching recently? Trixie Turnover. Like, I got to be honest, right? I didn't watch it at the time, but there was so much online about it. I kind of watched it afterwards. You made a very impressive, like drag queen. I thought you were amazing. I got to be honest, and the fact that you kept your beard.
Yeah, well, it wasn't they that kept it. There was a big conversation. They were like, "You're obviously getting rid of the beard," and I went,
No
I haven't been clean shaven for 12 years. There's not a chance. I've got no chin. It looks like I've got a big face, and this thing. My chin stops here. I've got the smallest pea head going. I'm like, mate, I'm sorry, the beard's got to stay. And they were like, right, we'll just spray paint it with about 1 kilo of glitter. Then that's it. And then that's taken. In fact, there might still be some knocking about, but
what did the dustbin lids think of that, and the kids when you showed them that show? Dad, have you gone mad?
The first issue we had was when we sat down and watched it with the kids. They went, "Daddy, how you're there? You're on the TV?" And I went, "Yeah." They're like, "But you're here." And I went, "Right, so we've got a stopping point here. You can't understand the concept of TV." But way back when we were recording it, and I'd had these heels sent through, and some of the gear to try on, and I was walking around the kitchen in them, and my eldest, my 8-year-old, is just head in hands like, "What's going on here?" Then my 6-year-old daughter, she's helping me, she's loving it, she's starting doing my nails and all that sort of stuff, so she got on board with it. But my wife, it really hit home to her when she'd taken Maggie out for like a regular shopping trip, and they were going around the town, and Maggie shouted across one of these stores, going, "Mummy, Mummy!" She picked up these massive heels and go, "Mummy, these will look really good on Daddy." And the shop assistant just walked over to my wife and just been like, "Yeah, okay, no, everything okay? Yeah, cool, yeah." And then walked on, and my wife was like, "Right, okay." But it was a great bit of fun. It was something different to do. I've always loved dressing up. I've always loved doing that side of things, and and there was a serious point to it as well. Like Lawrence, you asked about, well, what did the kids think about? Well, we live in 2022, and there's all sorts of questions, pronouns, genders that are surrounding the world, and it was also going to start having conversation with the kids about, there's our local secondary school, that they've got so many different genders at between 12 and 16, 12 and 18. And whatever your viewpoint of it all is, there needs to be have conversation. And the best way to start conversations is like, well, I'll dress up as a woman. And we'll see how that one goes. So that was part of the seriousness of doing it. And plus, it was just something different to do, something fun to do.
It looked like great fun.
Yeah, you were really good. I thought
Lawrence, you never tried a bit of drag?
Well, no? I mean, they look at the size and go, "Listen, we we've got wardrobes, but not for people like you.
But Joe, obviously, if you think about, either a sort of an outlandish tracksuit or, like you say, glitter in the beard, I guess the point is it doesn't matter what somebody looks like or what they're wearing. It's about the person, isn't it? Is that kind of the message you're trying to get across?
Ultimately, you can be whoever you want to be, do whatever you want to do, as long as it's coming from a place of love and kindness. It's not just airy fairy love and kindness stuff like that, because I can have criticism. Like I take it back to rugby. Being kind often is having a hard conversation of those standards aren't good enough. That's also part of being kindness. People just immediately think being kindness is saying, "Oh, you're fantastic. That's amazing. You're a thing," and you never actually address the issues. The kindness part is the honesty, starting the conversation, giving someone what they need to probably need to hear but don't want to hear in order to improve and get better. So that's kind of where it is. And yeah, you're right, Nick. It's just be whatever you want to be, mate. As long as it's not gonna upset or offend anyone else, you just be what you want to be.
You are definitely that, and we do love you for it most of the time. Okay, we could talk to you, obviously, like most of our guests, all day, but we'll move on to probably not your favorite subject now, Joe, actually, rugby. But we should definitely start with a mention to the Red Roses, who put on such a valiant display against the Black Ferns in that World Cup final. They went down to 14 players after just 80 minutes, of course. But listen, they were brilliant. Awesome tournament, awesome final. I suppose my question, Lawrence, to you would, what words, I don't know, of advice would you have for the players after doing so well and then experiencing that?
Well, it was heartbreaking. I mean, I've got up at 6 a.m. to watch it, and so did 1.8 other million people. So I think that regardless of the result, the sort of momentum that's got behind women's rugby, the Red Roses, etc., they should be very proud of what they've achieved. We've all lost big games of rugby, sadly. I think with the women, it's different because I think that more than some of the men's teams I've ever been involved in, they really invest a lot of themselves in the actual job, because it's not a job for them. A lot of them, they're not necessarily highly paid professionals. So they invest everything, and I think when you invest everything into that kind of experience, when you lose, it affects you really hard. And I think there'll be a lot of that team that will be really, really hurting still now, and still in a week, month, 2 months, 3 months time. But there's not a lot you can say in the early part of it. It's quite raw, the emotions. I think if they keep 15 people on the field, I think they go on and win that game. Playing New Zealand in New Zealand, they took the game to Eden Park. They brought in Wayne Smith. They gave themselves every advantage they possibly could. And I think with that extra woman, that's an extra man, not extra he, she, they. What are you allowed to say?
Good really? Working on your pronouns here. Really good work, Lawrence. Yeah, thank you.
I just felt for them, I really did. So, but they should feel very proud, I think. And the World Cup is in 4 years' time back here in the UK, and I think hopefully that they'll be able to move on from that. But really, really upsetting. But they should feel very proud of what they achieved.
Joe, you've been there. How tough is it to get through that? How long does that take?
I actually watched the game. I'd got in the Saturday morning, and I was sat there.
Barbar's night out, isn't it?
I was sat there with my kebab and a portion of chips, and then the game came on, and I was like, brilliant. So I watched it, and I don't want to be pernickety, but I'm arguing that the last thing that New Zealand have thrown the jumper across, and I actually think it should be a penalty the other way, but that's being pernickety. It is heartbreaking for them. I've been there, and it does take a long time for even now. It takes even longer when you've got social media constantly putting up the clip every 6 months of you getting skinned by Colby. Not once has he ever thanked me for that, actually. So ungrateful. It is tough, but you kind of got to accept. There was also at the end of our tournament, there was a few questions around that was posed to me. Mate, you still looked really quite happy and thinking, it was like, well, because I look back at the tournament and enjoyed it. Of course, I wanted the gold medal at the end of it. We all did. But the experience, the cultural experience, the unity of the group, and the memories we'd made along the way, you sort of have to take stock and appreciate. And it's hard to do, especially like Lawrence said in the moment and as raw as it is. But I think women's rugby is in a really good place. And even go back to my daughter, she sees these games and she goes, "Hang on a minute. I thought boys just did rugby. I thought that was it." And she was like, "Can I play rugby? Can I do that?" And it's those moments that go, "Well, hang on, there's the next generation that can come through now, because it's getting so much bigger and there's so many more characters in the game that are putting it out there to be more, and it's far more accessible." So I think in 4 years' time we should throw the kitchen sink at it like New Zealand did in their own backyard and give it a good go.
You said about the reaction there of after the final. It feels like with social media, everyone always trying to tell other people how to react. But how do you know how you'll react to whatever happens in the final until it actually happens? And I suppose we just have to again let people be, who they are and how they will be.
Yeah, I worry to continue too much down the Japan route with a very good friend of Sir Clive Woodward's, obviously sat on the call.
Don't you worry.
Don't worry, I don't want to put him in a too sticky a position. Me and Clive have got
exactly the way I feel, mate. Don't you worry about that. I think when you said just be who you want to be, I think when most England coaches I work with say, I just being who I want to be.
That's what you keep telling Eddie, Joe, isn't it?
I don't tell Eddie anything, mainly because he doesn't listen to anyone.
Should we move on to the men's game then, since we're on the subject of Eddie? Autumn internationals this weekend. We saw wins for Ireland against Fiji, Wales against Argentina, England against Japan. Lawrence, are you happier? Are you more content?
Can I just say, big up for the Northern Hemisphere rugby. Every team, apart from Scotland, they obviously didn't get the memo that you got to win this weekend. Every team, apart from Scotland, in the Northern Hemisphere, won their games, and I think quite a few teams, Ireland and France last week, and so when I first started playing against the Southern Hemisphere in the autumns, across the board, England would win the odd game, everyone else would get smashed to pieces. And I think now, a long time ago, but now as we go into a World Cup next year, I don't think the hemispheres have ever been closer than they are right now. Scotland nearly beat the All Blacks for the first time in their history. Ireland obviously doing great things. France winning again. And England, let's be honest, when you have a 4-match series, you've got to win your first game. We didn't do that against Argentina. Eddie's got a plan. None of us can understand quite what that plan is, but he has got one. And he's got this selection that he's maybe holding back, keeping for the World Cup. I thought he'd play his strongest possible team against Argentina, make a few changes for Japan, and then you go full on against the All Blacks. But when you lose your first game, suddenly you got some fault lines and you've got to go a bit stronger against Japan. I thought they played very well. You score 50 points against a team like Japan, you got to be quite happy with that. Positives, I think we've got a pack that are really coming together. The front row looks very, very strong. I prefer second rows to stay in the second row. Don't like them in the back row, but that's just me. I thought the young lad at scrum half, I think there's a decision to be made this week. Going to be very interesting. Does he go back to Ben Youngs, or does he actually give Jacques Van Poortvliet a real chance to play a slightly higher pace game, which I think you need to do against the All Blacks if you're going to win. And Freddie Stewart, I think, was a massive positive at fullback. But yeah, listen, I think we'll find out a little bit more about England in the next couple of weeks, because you've probably got to play your strongest available team. And it's going to be fascinating for Eddie, because the best performances England have ever produced under Eddie Jones have had Owen Farrell at 10, Manu Tuolangi at 12, and Henry Slade at 13. I remember Ireland away, and Joe Marler at 1, obviously.
Obviously.
No, I was 17 that day, actually. Like, you need to do a little bit more research, thank you.
So 2019 in Ireland, when we beat the Irish, New Zealand in that performance in Yokohama. So it's going to be fascinating. Does he go back to that particular selection, or does he continue with Marcus at 10 and Owen at 12? And I'm still a little bit confused by all of that. I think they can exist on the same pitch, but I just think you've got to start getting a few combinations going before the World Cup. And I know there's a lot of rugby next year, but I'd like to see our strongest possible team. But a lot to be positive about with England, I think.
Nick, what did you make of the rugby action this weekend?
Yeah, I thought England were very good. I thought David Ribbons had a really good debut, and what I liked about him and his debut is, I think in a back five of balance, you always need somebody who's just going to smash rucks all day long and give you continuity. And I think I loved it because that's what he did, and he added a bit more than that. But he just got in there and was just like, I'm just going to make a mess of the ones where we don't have the ball when I need to, and I'm going to give the team continuity and let the big beasts do their thing around that. And I think England really need that. It always look better when the ball is quick. I thought Van Portfleet was really good. He drove the pace. I don't really understand how Freddie Stewart is so calm under the high ball, but he was talking about having done a lot of work with sports psychologists at Leicester and England on that, and he looks absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I mean, I know what Lawrence is saying about second rows in the second row, and obviously, with a nod to Marrow, England clearly keep saying that they feel like they need 3 line-out jumpers. I understand the benefit of that as well. I do think Marrow be at his best at lock, but obviously, Courtney Laws is just a machine. I mean, how do you replace that? And I think they're doing pretty well there. In terms of Marcus Smith and Owen Farrell, I thought it's encouraging, and I guess you can do a sort of Johnny Sexton thing and take the ball very flat to the line and bring people around you like that, and then loop all day. Or I think you can sort of attack with a bit of depth, and then but if you're going to do that, you're demanding people to get their lines right and get their timing right and running off it. And you can see it sort of coming around the corner. But if they are going to do that, it's absolutely about having the pace from the base of the ruck and the speed of the ruck ball, and they definitely got that right against Japan. Obviously, it's just a much bigger challenge against New Zealand this weekend.
Yeah, so Eddie's got some decisions to make. Then Scotland almost pulling off a victory against the All Blacks in that brilliant France-South Africa game. The atmosphere looked insane in Marseille. And Italy, Joe, beating Australia. I mean, it's all kind of building up, isn't it? Quite nicely for the World Cup. The excitement levels are rising. What's your deal for the World Cup then?
What's my deal?
Well, yeah, as in,
I don't know. Is this like a semi-interview? Is there a big Evening Standard or London Pride gig out there that is there stuff available? Or
I'm just asking because you said, did you like a couple of months ago? You were like, you're willing to have a conversation with Eddie about it, but if the World Cup is not there for you, then you're going to shut up shop.
That was slightly misquoted, which isn't like the journalists that I speak to. No, that was slightly misquoted. It was like, I'd love to still be able to go and play at the next World Cup. I'd love to do that and give it one more crack. But as has been mentioned a couple of times by various different people, that they compare Gareth Southgate. They compare Eddie to Gareth Southgate occasionally on his selection and not picking on form, but picking on thingy. But when it comes to loosehead, he very much is picking on form. I'm not in the conversation because I'm not playing well enough. You've got Genji, who's now vice captain and a huge influence on that pack and key to England's attack and his defence, his physicality, but key to that team. Mako's come back this season and in great form. And then you've got young, hungry Bevan Rod and Val Rapava Ruskin, who you'd argue has been the form club loosehead in the league. And he's been in the squad, but then, you don't know what happens, but you can be as good a club player as you want, but you get into an international environment, albeit a squad, and sometimes you freeze, or sometimes it's not comfortable, or you can't really put your best foot forward there, because sometimes it's too big a step up. But you can argue that he might not be picking form on any other position, but he's certainly picking form in loosehead, and I can't argue with that. And I I recognise where I am, and I'll just keep playing. And if the call does come one day that I can make the World Cup, then brilliant. I'll take it with both hands. But I also recognise I'm 32, and I might be better suited to going out there with the Evening Standard or London Pride.
But you won't be shutting up shop is what my question.
No, there's no shutting up shop.
Okay,
no.
that's good. So Friday night saw current champions Leicester take a trip down to the Rec to face Bath, despite the home team being down 8-15, I think, at half-time. It was a try for Will Butt in the final moments of the game that saw them snatch a victory over the Tigers. I really enjoyed that one. There's some more good news for Bath, guys.
Yeah, do you know what? It's been. They couldn't win a raffle last season, could they? Really? And now they're is that 3 wins on the bounce? And well done to them. It's fascinating. We overanalyze the game of rugby sometimes, and players sometimes get a little bit maybe blasé. I know Joe's spoken about this already, but sometimes you take for granted what you've got. When you look at Bath's best performers in the last few weeks, the lads who have come across from Worcester, Ollie Lawrence and Ted Hill and Shilcott at fullback, they were probably the best 3 players on the field on Friday night, and they haven't taken for granted what they've got, because they're so lucky. They feel very lucky to have a contract, and the game is quite emotional sometimes. And I think when you bring that level of emotion, you can really improve a performance. So I think it's good things happening at Bath. I mean, what a finish, by the way, from the young lad on the wing. But I mean, what a finish! I mean, I could only dream of that, really. But I just thought it was great. And as much as I am impartial, and I love to be impartial, I mean, it's nice when Leicester get beat in the last minute of the game as well.
It's so not impartial.
You're a nasty piece of work, you are.
I am. I mean, they would say the same, really. They did call me the Antichrist, actually, at Leicester, to be honest with you. Maybe that was only 1 or 2 of them, but no, listen, I just thought it was great for them to, and it just shows how competitive this league is. So really pleased for their fans, Bath, because they've really had to be very patient. They keep turning up every week. They keep cheering their team on. They've watched some well below par performances over the last 12 months, but I think now they must feel like they're somewhere towards getting their club back on the map.
Joe, if Leicester's the team that Lol enjoyed beating most, who's the team that you enjoy beating most? Or
you already know the answer.
I know.
You already know the answer. They're just such a leading question. It's
probably Saracens or something like that, I would say. Probably.
That's just such a lazy. You're just that's out of order for you.
That's not easy. That's interesting. I want you to tell me.
It's not interesting, is it? I've been very vocal, probably to my detriment, about how much I enjoy doing.
Joe, very rare. She's trying to work out which team she works for, because it was BT Sport, then it's Amazon, then it's Sky.
Oh, nasty!
Been jumping ship left, right, and centre.
The only thing with Sarries is that it's mainly because it's such a rarity that we beat them. That's probably why I like it the most.
Unbelievable at the moment, aren't they?
They're absolutely on fire, mate. They've, the squad, or the previous squad players have now turned into shoo-ins for the first team, and they're really starting to step up. And there's also reaping the fact that there's some overlooked England quality players that are just going to town in the Premiership still. So like Ben Earl's completely on fire, and good on him. That was so painful to say. Good on them. Oh God.
And the thing is as well, Nick, they never know.
I feel sick. I need to stop. Oh God.
Open the window, Joe. Take a minute while Nick has
God.
That's the thing though, Nick, isn't it? They never know when they're beaten. Like 20 minutes ago, this weekend, Northampton had 22-point lead, looking like they were gonna be the ones to break Sarri's record, but they still fall back.
Just it's that calmness under pressure, isn't it? Just knowing that if refusing to accept that it's ever done, but sticking to processes and sticking to the plans, and knowing that you've got that in there to get it over the line. And good on people like Alex Lazowski, like Joe was talking about, England quality overlooked guys. With reference to the Japan game, that was the last time he played for England, the last time England played Japan, and obviously he hasn't played since, but what he's done for Saracens has been, massively impressive. And like you said, Ben Earl, he's another absolute monster. And I think surely he's going to come back into the England picture at some point.
Okay, 2 more quick games to get through then. Another upset in the West Country, just giving some men. I don't know, they suffered at the hands of Newcastle. They pulled off a win at Kingsholm, 27 points to 21. There was poor discipline, I guess, from the Falcons, who played most of that second half with 14 men. But Lawrence, all things considered, George Skivington just must be scratching his head after that.
He must be very frustrated. I mean, they were playing at home as well. I mean, I know they're missing Adam Hastings and Chris Harris, who have been big sort of leaders for them this season. But you would have expected, and a number of other players, but you would have expected that, the result to go their way. I guess I would say sometimes if you give, unless you're Saracens, of course, if you give sides if you give yourself a bit too much to do, I think Newcastle were out sight by half time, and I think Gloucester came back into the game second half, but they give themselves too much to do, really. And they're a team that are learning, but I do feel at 9 and 10, particularly when you're playing these games when the internationals are on, you need that experience at 9 and 10. Just to guide you through. And I'm not sure that's quite where Gloucester have that depth. They've certainly got it in the back row and the front row, but they need to maybe get that depth in their 9 and 10 positions if they want to win games while their best players are away.
Yeah, and then the other result of the weekend is Exeter beating London Irish 22 points to 17. Okay, well, should we do our outstanding player then of the weekend? Lawrence, you can go first this week. Who's your outstanding player?
I was going to go with the young lad who scored the try for Bath. But I did watch the internationals, and I think we, being sort of a little bit Italian myself, I think we go with Capuzzo, the fullback. I just think he scored 2 tries against Australia, and he's such a cracking player. Is it Ange Capuzzo? I mean, that's a name, isn't it? And so I'm going to go with him. I think for Italy to beat a team like Australia, I think it's just brilliant for Italian rugby. We give them a really hard time, all of us do, saying, should they, shouldn't they be involved? But I think they deserve it. And he was outstanding at the weekend. So we'll go with Capuzzo, the fullback.
Joe?
I'm also going to go with an Italian. Having watched it, and it is a biased thing, and I can hear it already, Lowell going, standard Quins, always picking a Quins thing. It's not that case. Tommaso Allen was fantastic on the ball, the way he was playing. He was awful with the boot. They could have been well clear of Australia for a long period of time, but I'm giving it to him because because he was so poor off the tee, he enabled the drama to go all the way down to the wire, and they relied on the Australian guy. He was the guy who was on debut as well, and the lad that came on for the kick.
Can you clear it up? Why does he like being called Tommy Allen and not Tommaso? Because I call him Tommaso, and everyone keeps correcting me in my ear, saying, no, I said Tommy Allen sounds like an American name. I mean, I was like...
No, I've had it from the horse's mouth. I've said, what do you want me to call you? And he says, Tommaso. So whoever you're talking to, Lo is wrong. It's Tommaso. He wants Tommaso.
Hey, I've got it.
Keep going with Tommaso. Christ, Tommaso. It sounds fantastic,
why would you
Tommaso.
Tommy if you're Italian? Exactly.
Nick, who you going for?
Obvious, but I say Freddie Stewart. I just think for someone that's got 15 caps to be so in control in such a difficult position for so many reasons, and to have so much influence. He's 21. To have so much influence on that team already from the back of the back line. He was saying that he watched the World Cup semi-final at the Students' Union, basically. So to have gone from there to here in this time, hats off to him.
I'm going to go with either Ted Hill, mainly for the reasons that Lawrence spoke about, the impact I think that he's had, as well as Ollie Lawrence and the Worcester boys on Bath have been impressive. Or maybe Talupe Faletau, actually. I thought he was really good for Wales as well, especially they were under so much pressure going into this game against Argentina. So yeah, 2 for me for what it's worth. Right. Next weekend is the Premiership Cup. That's in action, but round 11 of the Premiership returns the following week. So we'll hold off on any match predictions this week. However, England face New Zealand at Twickenham. Joe, who do you think England, or what do you think England need to do to try and pull off a victory against the All Blacks?
Well, as Lowell mentioned earlier, like the pack is really starting to fire up. I like the fact that they've got at least 4 or 5 carriers, like genuine out-and-out ball carriers in there now. It's just with the New Zealand team, you've got to get that balance between having those 4 or 5 carriers actually recognising that they need to do their graft and their work about the breakdown, because that'll be the key between the two teams. If they hold out too much, they try and hold attacking shape too much and not actually win the ball and expect for the second or third phase, getting shape up for the second or third phase, well, it won't come, because New Zealand are that good at the breakdown. And I'm really excited. There's always trying to pick like heads with players, but I like the sound of Genji going at RD Sevilla and vice versa, because they're both in your face characters, big ball carriers, big hitters. I'm excited to see that. If England can get it right, it's also a little bit dependent. I don't care.
We said we wouldn't talk rugby on this show, so.
But I'm trying my really hardest. No, of course I care. I've also got this in the back of my head.
You are trying to look engaged as well, in fairness to you, Joe. You've done a good job.
I am. But there is always something in the back of my mind, and it is a little bit, you can't say that. Ultimately, they're international friendlies. So although you say test matches aren't ever friendly, of course not, but they are international friendly. So I see it as like, well, I would blood a lot more. I would worry far less about winning. But on the international stage and the pressure that comes on, obviously it is about winning, but I would blood a lot more youngsters and see where they're at with it. I'm going to go for an England win by 2.
Oh, okay. Brave. The other games this weekend: Wales take on Georgia, Scotland will face Argentina, Italy host South Africa, Ireland, they're going to be up against Australia, and France will be playing against Japan. And of course, we'll bring you all the results and chat in next week's pod. So Joe, it's time for a few more questions, then you are done. Right, you're going to get tackled now by Lawrence Dallaglio.
We've had enough of the rugby. Let's go straight to the bit that all our listeners want to hear. Joe, your full name, please, sir.
Joseph William George Marler.
Wow, that's very posh.
I'm trying to change it at the minute, but
lots of kings in there, like William George and
yeah.
What are you trying to change it to? Sorry.
I'm trying to change it to Joseph, Josef, Mala, Mala, but don't worry about that. Well, that's another story.
Favorite takeaway?
Chinese. The walk-in from Lawton does the best Chinese in the world. It's phenomenal. Beautiful.
Who did you have a celebrity crush, or I mean, was it a drag queen maybe growing up? I mean, Eddie Izzard, was he your celebrity?
I used to watch a lot of Lily Savage. My celebrity crush, I really liked Rachel from Friends.
Good choice. What was the last movie you watched?
Red Dragon. I think it's a prequel, but it came out after Silence of the Lambs. Anthony Hopkins, Ralph Fiennes. Oh, it's dark. Love it.
Good stuff. And listen, what do you? I mean, it probably changes every day, but what do you have for breakfast? What does Joe Marler have for breakfast?
Coffee. Yeah, I live miles away, don't I? So I'm up at 5, and I can't be asked to make anything. So I'll just grab a coffee, get on the road, and that'll be my breakfast.
Do you have a nickname? Do the lads call you something?
Croissant, because my nose is bent like the French pastry, so they just call me croissant.
Now, what is the best advice that you've ever been given, either on the field or off it?
This too shall pass. Whether you're at the highest height of whatever you're doing in your life, just remember this too shall pass. And when you're at the lowest low of whatever you're doing in your life, this too shall pass, and that time is your ally. And that's something that I'm trying really hard to sort of accept and understand a bit more.
Good advice. Who is, would you say, is the most famous person in your phone book? If your kids sort of went to scroll through your address book and they went, "Daddy, I didn't know you knew so and so," who's that person?
Jonathan Ross. I went to his Halloween party the other week.
Did you? What was that like?
Just another level of surrealness. The characters there and the goings on. I was very much out of my depth, but it was definitely an experience.
What did you go as?
I went as Captain Spaulding He's a dark, sadistic clown from a house of 1,000 corpses.
Oh, sounds
I
nice.
wouldn't say you're out of your depth. I'd say you were right in it. Now, talking of which, who would play you in a film about your life?
Tony. His name's Tony Way, and he's Lenny from Afterlife. He's like the one that Ricky Gervais always grabs the rolls on the back of his head.
Yep.
He was also the fool in Game of Thrones. I think he'd make a good me.
I think you would as well.
Now, we know that you're a funny person, but who's the funniest person that you know? Who's the guy that makes you, or the girl that makes you laugh the most?
Coley really, really makes me like belly chuckle.
I mean, he has got a face that you can laugh at just by looking.
Well, he just like anything he does, like he makes me belly chuckle, and it's like most of it's unintentional. He's just it's ridiculous human.
Dan Cole. Now listen, are you a dog or a cat person? Do you have a dog or a cat, or do you have both?
I had a cat growing up, but always wanted a dog, and finally I've got 2 dogs, a black lab and a cavapoo called Bean Juanito.
Do you like use its full name when you're calling it in the park?
Yeah, and it still doesn't work because even if I shorten it, he's quite a thick lad.
What do you shorten it to?
To Bean.
Okay.
Now, moving on, what is your karaoke song? If you have to get up and do a little song in front or a duet, what's your go-to?
Adele, Someone Like You.
Oh, straight in there. Sarra, do you like that? Sarra, you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I just wouldn't have had him down as that kind of song, Joe. To be honest.
I've got a playlist on my Spotify that it used to be called Dark and Gloomy. But going through various different things, I thought I was trying to, change it a little bit. So I've changed it to thoughtful now. So it's more of a positive connotation to it. And Adele will be right on that.
Like the way you spun that. That's good. That's really. What's your favourite TV show, Joe?
Afterlife, the series is just wonderful. But I'm a stickler for I'm a Celeb at the minute. Can't get enough of it.
Oh, Tins, eh? How about that?
Oh, mate. It's even better when you know someone on it, and it's
he hasn't had that
watch.
moment yet where he's had to tap someone on the shoulder. Don't worry, there's 12 of us, and you've only bought how many 2 meals yet? 80s first, so I've basically got absolutely fuck all to eat.
Oh, it's really good.
That is brilliant. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm starving. I'm hungry. I'm really happy. Which superhero would you most like to be? On occasion, as I would imagine.
Who's the superhero? Spider-Man. Yeah, only because my 2 sons would be most impressed by that.
Okay, now the last couple of questions, which are rugby questions, even though we said we wouldn't. Who do you look at as the best rugby player of all time? Who was the person that you really looked up to, or you still look up to?
The best rugby player.
I mean, your mentor would be in the conversation, obviously.
Yes, he would be in the conversation. I just thought it was too easy. He'd be in the conversation. I really enjoyed Brad Thorne. Just loved the way he went about things. Yeah, I mean, Jason Leonard, obviously, in my own position. But Brad Thorne was someone that I really enjoyed.
I like that answer. Now, I think I know the answer to this question, but your proudest Premiership moment would be, I mean, you were 250 and you got spankings, so that probably wasn't your proudest moment.
No, and I'm not really bothered about that. Like, there was always a bit of hoo-ha. It's your 250. I said, I don't care. None of you did a hoo-ha for 249. Do you know what I mean? What's the crack?
So go on then. Proudest Premiership moment.
The proudest Premiership moment was 2021. The way it went from Guzzy getting the chop in December, things all over the place at the club, the boys pulling together, and then backs against the wall, just joueing, or as we say, juve, rather than jouet, because our captain at the time couldn't quite understand. We did a big speech. He did get huddled before one of the games, and we'd be talking about jouet. Let's just jouet do. And Stefan, really thick Afrikaans. As in thick accented, not thick.
No, he's not thick.
He's not thick. Thick accented, excellent. we all thinking big moment. And then just before we went out, got us in a huddle and he was like, "Yes, guys, let's just go out and juve, hey?" And we were like, everyone's looking around the circle going, "Juve? What?" And he went, What did I say? Oh, sorry, duvet. Let's go out to duvet. And we're like, "That's not it either, mate. It's juve." He was like, "Oh, I don't know. Just go out and play, eh? Let's go out and play." So yeah, 2021 and seeing the boys enjoy it as much as the young boys enjoy the following 3 or 4 days was something that I'll always be proud of.
Well, listen, Joe, thank you for being our guest this week. I've got a feeling that you might be doing a bit more Juve as you're fourth in the Premiership at the moment. And good luck with the rest of the season. And keep that phone on because you never know with that pecking order that might all change.
No, my phone will be on, but I've got plenty lined up already. We're actually taking the podcast on a live tour next year in April. We're doing Glasgow, Birmingham, Manchester, and actually we've somehow managed to bag the London Palladium. Whoa. Of which I walked past during this week on the Barbarians gig, and I had to double check. I rang the podcast crew and was like, "Are you sure that like this there's not another Palladium, like it's spelt different or so? It's this Palladium?" Because they've got this big wall of people that have all done it, and it's got the two Ronnies and all these different, and I'm like, I'm not sure like this is going to go well. And they were like, "No, we've definitely got it. We just need people to buy tickets now." I will have my phone on, Lawrence, but I've got plenty to keep me busy for now.
Well, I'm sure we'll be advertising that, Nick, in the Evening Standard, won't we?
Oh, delightful.
Absolutely. 100%.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, Nick.
You're welcome.
What a lovely, handy networking podcast this is. Wonderful.
Glad you come on now, aren't you?
Thanks for having me, guys.
Always good
Thanks,
to
Joe.
So that's all then for this episode of this Evening Standard Rugby Podcast, supported by Fuller's London Pride. Don't forget, you can watch the full video episode with all the extra bits at londonpridebeer.co.uk.
And we'll be back next week. Until then, thanks for listening. If you want to listen to a rugby podcast, it's obviously ours. If you want to listen to a non-rugby podcast, then it's Joe Marler's.